Welcome to Recalculating Small Business. Like its award-winning book, Recalculating is dedicated to small business in America. Your hosts are Don Mazzella and Dan Perkins. Don Mazzella is the editor-in-chief of the Small Business Digest. Dan Perkins is a registered investment advisor with 43 years' experience in managing money.
Dan Perkins here, your co-host, along with Don Mazzella of Recalculating for Small Business. Our radio program is dedicated to you, helping the small business owners increase their profits. We draw our name from Recalculating, voted the best small business book of 2017 by the Independent Press. In this book, it features ways to grow your small business. Now, here's Don Mazzella.
My co-host, Dan Perkins, is on assignment, but we have Terry Moore, who readily admits that he's made mistakes in his life, but learned a great deal from it, and he's sharing it today about selling your small business. Terry, welcome to the program.
Don, thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to talking with you.
Well, Terry, tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about your book, and your website.
My background is pretty diverse in the way that I'm an old entrepreneur because I've owned over 40 different businesses. And then along the way, I've sold more than 500 businesses too, helping people sell their business plus my own business. So I talk about that, Don, the fact that I've owned so many different businesses that not all of them were successful. And as I've shared in the past, I had a disease for a long time that was called dealitis. I just couldn't pass up a deal. And I ended up owning restaurants and video rental stores, retail stores, gas stations, motels, radio, TV, pretty well the gamut of it all. And the neat thing about it was the fact that not all of them were successful, and I made money in a lot of them, and some of them I didn't. But over the years, owning all these different businesses, what I realized I wasn't as good as operator as I really thought I was, because one of the bigger businesses I owned, I was a vendor to Walmart, and I had stores all over the country with Walmart, servicing those people. But I wasn't that good of an operator. When you're making money, you think you're the man. I really know how to make money. I'm doing good. And then when things go bad, you wonder what in the heck just happened. But what I discovered I was good at was finding deals, putting deals together, and then taking it to the next level. And so when I was wanting to get rid of these businesses, the ones that I had, at one time I was operating about 6 or 7 at the same time, I didn't know how to get out of these. And my old saying has always been, businesses and relationships are easier to get into than they are to get out of. And so I didn't know how to get out of these things, especially without losing my shirt. And so I discovered later on I didn't know there was a business intermediary or business broker or anybody that could help me with something like that. So I ended up getting rid of all the businesses, made a lot of mistakes, realized what I was good at, and I started a company called American Business Brokers and Advisors. And over the time period, like I've mentioned earlier, I've sold over 500 different businesses. I've sat with so many sellers, so many different kinds of people. I learned a lot from that. And it really grieved me over the years to see all the mistakes that a lot of sellers make. And I thought, how can I circumvent all these mistakes? And I wrote the latest book I just wrote is called Selling with Certainty, Straightforward Advice for Cashing In on the Full Value of Your Business. And what the book is, it has a template for anybody that ever considers selling their business. And if you own a business, you should read it because it shows that there is a process. It shows the right things to do and definitely the wrong things not to do so you don't get blindsided. You know, Don, it's like having children. You know, when you have children, they don't give you a template or an instruction manual for this. You really, most of the time, you're just bouncing around trying to figure it out. And the same thing happens when people go to sell their business because they're only going to do it once. And they have no clue where to start. And generally, a business that they own is the largest financial asset that they own. So why would people, not pay more attention to it? So that's how I ended up in this arena, and why I ended up writing that book.
A lot of young people don't want to go into their parents' business. In fact, it seems to be a trend. What do you say to that?
I say that I see that more so than what people would realize. And sometimes they shouldn't go into their parents' business. I deal with a lot of second and third generation businesses, Don. And, mom and dad started it. They fought the battles. They dealt with all the financial worries. And then the kids just show up. Well, the kids were always there during the business. And a lot of them seen how hard mom and dad had to work to get it, the business to where it is, and they don't want to work that hard. A lot of sellers tell me that they talk to their children before they ever, have an interview with me as to, how they want to go forward. And kids just don't want to work that hard. They want to go get a job. And so it's quite common.
It's sad. Well, the next question is, when someone when should they decide to sell a business? You say it's oftentimes late. What do you tell people when they say, I'm thinking of selling my business? You
ask a great question, Don. Most people sit around and they say, well, I'm going to sell this business when I get to be a certain age or a certain thing happens in my life. And that's not the time to be selling your business. The best time to be selling your business is when it's doing good. When the market is hot and things are going well, that's when you want to sell. The market doesn't care if you're not at that certain age point that you think you need to be at or that certain point in your life. The market doesn't care. Now, if you don't care if you don't get top dollar for your business, then you're okay. But most people procrastinate and they wait too long and they ride the horse too long. And and a lot of people, Don, will just ride the business right in the ground until they don't have anything to sell. So the best time to sell is when it's doing great. It's trending in an upward trend.
Okay, but if you're deciding to sell a business, why not try sell it to someone inside the company,
such as an employee or a manager?
Mm-hmm.
You can try it. I'm going to generalize here, but I'm going to say it won't work because there's an employee brain and there's an entrepreneurial brain. The entrepreneurial brain is the one that built the company, took the risk, realized what the big gains was, but they were willing to handle the risk. The employee brain wants to come in at a certain time, leave at a certain time. They don't want to put in those long hours. They don't want to work, as we say, half a day. I generally work a half a day. Sometimes I work the first 12. Sometimes I work the second 12. People don't want to do that. And I've tried it, and I've seen many other people try it, and that employee brain just can't get over that hump. But here again, it's a generalization, but that's what I've seen in my career.
Well, then let's go on. I've heard it said that some people who are selling a business overvalue it or undervalue it. Why don't you go talk to that?
Oh, absolutely, Don. Most people, I think, undervalue their business because the number one problem is they don't know what they're selling. It's so ironic. Their business is probably the largest financial asset they have on their financial statement. Yet they treat it differently. They treat it like it's not. And so therefore, they don't get professional assistance to begin with to find out what it's worth. And they'll leave money on the table. I've seen people leave millions of dollars on the table because they didn't want to go out and ask for help, ask for somebody to help them get a business valuation. Not too often, and sometimes it goes the other way, that they try to ask too much. And it's just because of ignorance, and it's okay to be ignorant, but you need to go get that information. And so my first thing is find out what you're selling. Let's find out what it's worth. You don't have enough information to make the next decision. People think that, selling a business is just like selling a car or a house. And it's unbelievably different. Even if somebody sold a business one time before, they think, I can do this. And you really can't. Because a business is a living, breathing entity. That's what it is. And it changes constantly. And you can't do your own deals. You can't sell your own business. I do it professionally. However, when it comes to selling my stuff, I'm practically inept, because when you try to sell your own stuff, you're too close to the deal because it has personal feelings to you. And chances are you probably talk too much. You tell things that you shouldn't have told, share too much information that the buyer doesn't need to know. And you can't take criticism, because you're so personal. And nobody likes to hear they have an ugly child, and that's what some people think they're being told they got an ugly child. And the other reason is you're automatically in an adversarial position, buyer, seller. There's, in a nutshell, is what my take on that is.
Okay, but how do you go about valuing a company? Do you have an example that you can give us?
I do. Most people think, well, if I'm going to value my business, I'm going to go to my accountant. Now, I'm not bashing accountants, but accountants work on historical numbers. And so, therefore, all they can tell you is what you've done in the history of your business. They don't sell businesses, and they don't deal in, generally, your exclusive arena of your business. If you're in the retail business, if you own retail stores, or if you own restaurants, or if you owned convenience stores or hotels, an accountant doesn't work in that arena, so they don't know what the multiples and what the values are. You want to find somebody who does business valuations, or business broker, or an investment banker, depending on the size of the business, that has experience in that area of your business. You don't want just somebody off the street.
Okay. Well, then who do you go to? I've always been told that you sell a business based on the future, and you buy a business based on the fact of what you can do with that future. What do you say to that?
Well, people told you correct. When you sell a business, what you're buying is a future cash flow. That's what you're buying, is the cash flow. Just as I mentioned earlier, you asked me, when's the best time to sell a business? I said when it's doing good. Because if I got a business that's trending, every year it's trending up a little bit, that's a good trend. You don't want to buy a business that's trending downward unless you want to take a discount. Then one of my problems for owning so many different businesses, owning 40 different businesses, was the fact I didn't ask the right questions. And one of the questions I should have asked myself was, am I buying this business just for the thrill of the chase to get the adrenaline rush? Or what is my upside? As you mentioned, you buy a business for the cash flow. So what's the upside of that cash flow? And that's when you got to do your analytics and find out, am I buying in a dead arena of businesses? A lot of businesses become under attack. I used to have hundreds of video rental stores. Well, that's a dead industry now. Retail is under attack from Amazon. You got to look at the landscape, but you buy the cash flow. You were correct.
Well, but given that, okay, can you give us a really concrete example of a restaurant or somebody? I look at a restaurant; it's doing $500,000 a year, okay, and it throws off, let us say, $50,000 in free cash. How do you go about valuing that?
There's different multiples and different formulas for every kind of business, but I'll do a restaurant for you. I'll do it standing on my feet here, okay? Mm-hmm. Let's say I've got a seasoned restaurant. It's been around for more than 5 years, so it isn't a newbie. It's throwing off $50,000 a year cash flow. Now I got to ask, is that cash flow after it's paid myself. I'm the one running it, and I'm paying my owner, myself too. So do I add that back? Do I have discretionary income that the seller's paying personal expenses with? That's an add back. So when I get done, let's say I did all these add backs, Don, and I got the business doing $100,000 a year. It's just is it a franchise or is it a local yokel? And if it's a local deal, it's probably worth about 2 to 3 times that income. Maybe I can get, if I get $100,000 income out of it a year, it's probably worth a couple times to 3 times that, 2 to 300,000 plus some equipment. And am I buying? And is the buyer? You're asking me to get down the weeds on this, but is the buyer buying themselves a job, or are they buying a business that's scalable? So I turn my sights back to who the buyer is, but the multiples for a restaurant, small service business, a lot of times multiples 2 to 3 times, plus any other equipment that may be involved.
I use that as an example because I look at the Sunday Times every Sunday, and there's always 2 or 3 or 4 restaurants, some brand new, that are being sold at auction, their equipment, etc. But let's go on to a consulting business that has 1 or 2 employees. How do you sell a consulting business?
Oh, you're asking some good questions. These are toughies. I'm selling blue sky if I'm selling a consulting business. So how old is the business? Let's say that Don owns a consulting business and he's got 2 employees. He's been in business 10 years. How many accounts does he have? I got to make sure that he doesn't have just 3 or 4 major accounts. I got to make sure that he's got enough accounts that the risk is spread, that the income's coming in. And here comes the big question. And we're role playing here, Don. Can I take Don out and slip me in without the business having a hiccup? And if I can do that, then my multiples, depending on the industry again, but they're probably going to be about the same. I'll probably get 2 or 3 years out of that because chances are, and this would be the same if it was a real estate company, chances are when Don's gone, I'm going to take a hit on the business. Unless I do a workout with Don and I pay Don so much money to hang around to keep everything in place. Yeah. And if you want me to, I'll structure it for you too.
It's fascinating. We've just sold parts of our business to a larger company because they've promised us the ability to expand the stations in which we're heard. So we're in effect betting part of our future on their ability to grow. And if they grow, they get a lion's share of profits. But I've always believed that a bigger pie, a less percentage of a bigger pie is sometimes better than a bigger percentage of a smaller pie. Do you see that in some of your business decisions?
Don, you just give me goosebumps. A real quick story. I had about 40 video rental stores. I made a deal with Walmart. Everywhere you see a Walmart in the United States Supercenter, I had video rental stores on them. And I got to a point that I ran out of money. I borrowed from every bank, every friend, every SBA, everything I could. And I needed another $10 million minimum, if not 20, for the orders I had from Walmart. Because we were building 10 stores a month. And I had to go to a venture capitalist. And you talk about Shark Tank. Shark Tank, those guys they're nice guys compared to venture capitalists. And he asked me that same question you just asked me. He said, Terry, you got a choice. Do you want to continue to be a big fish in a little pond, or would you like to be a smaller fish in a huge pond? We'll go national and international. And I had to think about that for about 2 seconds. And I said, let's go for it. Because I would rather spread my risk and go for the big pond. And if it's scalable, as like yours, you bet, I'd go for it.
Your website, your book again?
The book can be purchased on Amazon, or you can go to terrymonroe.com/certainty.
Well, interesting. In the few minutes we have left, what are 3 or 4 things someone approaches you and says, I'm thinking of selling my business. What are the first 2 or 3 things you ask that person?
First thing I'm going to ask them, are you sure you want to sell? Why? First thing is out of my mouth. Why do you want to sell? Because it's never for the money. People think it's for the money. The number one reason people sell a business, Don, is burnout. They're burned out. They're tired of it. They can't do it anymore. They don't want to do it anymore. So I need to know why. Number one, why? And then once I figure out the why, then I can help them go to the next step. Okay, what are you going to do after you sell? Well, I don't know. That's not a good answer. You need to know. And then I share with them that it's a process. Because they always say, well, how long is this going to take? And it usually takes anywhere from 6 to 12 months to sell one of these things. It takes a lot longer. And there is a process. People don't realize there's a process. They think, like I mentioned earlier, Don, it's not like selling a car or a house. You'll post a sign out in front. There's a process. And the process is, you want to make sure that you look at the business through a buyer's eyes and not through your eyes. You're too close to it.
I'll ask you a different question. What happens when you get to the point of signing, and you're not, and your gut's telling you not to sell? Has that ever happened to you? And if so, what do you think some of the reasons are?
It's happened to me once that I can recall, but I see it happening to my clients a lot. And what I do is I suggest, and I do it myself, I say, let's go, you need to go into a dark room and sit down and say, well, Terry, how's this working for you? Do you want to stick with what you're doing? And what does the future look like 5 years from now? And I have a real heart talk with myself. Okay, you want to stick it out for another 5 years? How does it look health-wise, family-wise? And if you're willing to make that a commitment, then go forward. But most of the time, people at that point have decided that they need to get out, and there's a reason they're even thinking about it. But they need to be coached. They need to have somebody. Real quickly, when I got in this business, Don, I thought this would be a piece of cake. It's all numbers. I'm great at numbers. And I was 100% wrong. It's all psychology. I thought there wouldn't be any emotion in selling a business. I'll just crank the numbers out. This is a very, very emotional business, helping other people. I think you can probably relate, gut-wrenching.
I totally agree. What happens when you have partners, one of whom wants to sell and the other one doesn't, but neither has the money to buy out the other?
Number one, they probably made a mistake by not having a buy-sell agreement, because when everybody gets in business, remember I said businesses and relationships, easier to get in than get out? First thing you need is a buy-sell. If you don't have a buy-sell, big mistake, because we were having a love fest when Terry and Don got in business. We're going to do this forever. But to your point, experiences quite often, we may just split the business up. We can split it up, or I can take a reduced interest. If you want to be the operator, I'll go step back a little bit. But hopefully I will mitigate this so that we don't have to auction it off or become on bad terms, because people always remember the beginning and the end of relationships. They never remember the middle, how we got here. So you really have to you need an intermediary to help you walk through this. Tough.
Terry Moore, we've got to invite you back. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Your website again, and how people could reach you, and a phone number if they really want to reach you?
TerryMonroe.com, and the phone number 800-805-9575.
And spell out Monroe. Spell out the website.
Sure. Terry, Terry, Monroe, MONROE.com. And for those that are old like I am, it would be like Monroe, the president. Mm-hmm. Remember history class.
But Terry, it's been like I say, you have to come back because I'm sure we could talk another half hour or more on the subject.
I'd love to. I enjoy talking with you. You ask great questions.
Been at it a while, and we just went through the process. And frankly, I wish I had talked to you before I went through the process.
But you have my heart goes on. You have my sympathy and my empathy because it's tough. It's very tough.
And it did take longer than everybody expected.
And you do talk to yourself a lot too, Don. I know.
Let me ask you. Someone said the best deals are those that where both parties leave something on the table. Do you feel that's the same way when selling your company?
I do. I think only fair deals get done. Nobody gets skinned. Leave a little meat on the bone for the next guy because he's buying upside. And you don't want to try to just cut it to the bone. That's not how it works in my world. I don't see that.
I'm going to ask you one more. What about taking paper back as part of selling?
Well, I encourage that. And you mentioned partners. I encourage taking paper back because if I'm buying your business, I want you to carry some paper because I don't want you taking the cash and running for the hills. I want you to stay my partner. You got a vested interest in me. So when I call you, I want you to answer the phone and answer my questions. Remember, you know everything about this business. You've done it for years. I don't know that much about it. I need you. And so I want you to carry paper. And if it's just a service business, it's a leap of faith. If there's hard assets involved, then you're covered. But I'm a big proponent of that.
Like I say, you have to come back again, Terry. Have a great day.
Don, thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed talking with you.
Want to know more about health savings accounts for your company or yourself? Go to 2hsa.com and get a free employer's primer. Health savings accounts are a cost-effective way of offering health care benefits to your employees and yourself. HSAs build retirement funds for your employees, improve morale, and reduce your health care benefit cost. For a free employer guide to HSAs, go to 2hsa.com. That's 2hsa.com.
Dan Perkins here with your Recalculating Small Business Tip of the Day. Did you know that a candle can be an energy saver for home and office? An old-fashioned candle can be a new-fashioned energy saver and at the same time provide a warm glow to any home office. Adding a candle seems like a silly thing to do, but it can help check for drafts. You can use the candle to test if new windows are needed. Here's how. First, take a roll of blue painter's tape and tear off pieces and put them on your left arm. Pass the candle around the opening and mark the spots around each window and door where the candle flame flickers. When you have finished your test, step back and see if you have tape around all of the window or only one side. The more tape you have on the window, the more money you will save by replacing those windows and doors. Check out recalculating.biz for more useful small business suggestions. This has been Dan Perkins with your Small Business Tip of the Day.
My co-host Dan Perkins is on assignment, but we're happy today to have Jason Dyes. He's EVP and President of SMB Solutions. I love that big title of Pitney Bowes. And he's bringing in a very interesting study that they've done, which I'm going to let him explain. But the important thing is people in the small business sector are beginning to understand how important shipping is. Jason, welcome to the program.
Thanks. I'm very happy to be here, Don.
Okay, Jason, well, first question is a little bit about yourself personally, then a little bit about the company and your study, and finally a website where people can learn more.
Fantastic. So I'm happy to join you today, Don. I am, again, my name's Jason Dyes. I've been with Pitney Bowes for 3 years now. Pitney Bowes is obviously a 100-year-old company in the shipping and mailing space, and our primary role is to help clients take complexity out of their shipping and mailing business and help them find ways to reduce cost. I have been leading the SMB solutions business here for about a year. In this business, we support small and medium business clients around the world, almost 1 million clients globally we work with on a fairly regular basis. And I'm happy to be talking to you here today about our parcel shipping index, which we recently announced. And maybe we can talk a little bit later on about what that means for some of our SMB clients here in North America and some of your listeners.
Well, first tell us about the survey and what it means.
Yeah, so about 3 years ago at Pitney Bowes, we realized that we had a lot of data around shipping and what was happening in shipping globally, and obviously recognized that shipping is a significant cost for many of our clients, a significantly complex process, actually a surprisingly complex process given it's something we all do on a fairly regular basis. So about 3 years ago, we put together a shipping index. So it was a survey of trends globally that are happening. We used it initially as a little bit of a tool for us to understand how we could serve clients better and how we could help them reduce costs and take out complexity, and quickly realized that there was a lot of interest in this topic. So we've been publishing this shipping index for about 3 years now. We basically use it to measure parcel volumes and spend across a couple different categories: business-to-business shipping, business-to-consumer shipping, and consumer-to-business shipping. We look at about 13 countries around the globe, and we've been tracking now for about 3 years their shipping habits, shipping spends, and overall parcel volumes.
Well, you've got 14 countries. Where does the U.S. rank in all of this?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. So overall, there was about a $279 billion in revenue last year in shipping. It's staggering amounts of money are being spent on shipping. It actually grew from 2016 by about 11% on a revenue basis. And the actual parcel volume grew 17%. We had about 74 billion packages globally being shipped around the world. That was up from 63 billion the year before. And by the way, our view is that will break the $100 billion barrier probably by 2020. So it's a hugely growing space. On average, there are about 22 parcels shipped per person globally. Just a kind of handy stat on that, just to kind of put this in perspective, is there are about 2,300 parcels being shipped every second last year. So a pretty amazing amount of traffic, and obviously a pretty complex space for a lot of the customers and clients we work with. The U.S. you asked about in particular, the U.S. has a couple interesting things. So we rank about 4th on actual parcels per person at about 37 parcels per person here in the U.S. It's interesting to note Japan leads. They ship about 76 parcels per person on average. But the U.S. actually ranks highest in total spend on shipping. It's actually most expensive to ship in the U.S., which I know affects a lot of the people that listen to your show. And the U.S. actually spent about $107 billion last year. About 38% of the total that we looked at was done here in the U.S. And just to quantify that for you, it's about $9 a package on average to ship here in the U.S. You compare that to about a little under $2 in China and about $2.50 in Japan. You can get a sense of how expensive shipping actually is for us here in the U.S.
That's a fascinating statistic. Why is that? I mean, Japan has costs relatively similar to ours. Why the big differential in cost between Japan and the United States?
Yeah, I think it's a number of things, right? I mean, so there are different, each of the shipping markets have different levels of maturity and different levels of carriers and processes and all of those types of things that roll up. You couple that with the different types of things that can be shipped, and it just creates a significant delta in the price point. And importantly, one of the things that we found as an outgrowth of not only the shipping index, but as an outgrowth of the work we do with small businesses around the world, and particularly here in the U.S., the interesting thing to me is I don't think it has to be that way. That $8.95 average in the U.S. cost, there's a lot of opportunity, I think, that small and medium businesses have to work that cost down, and that's something we've been very focused on here at Pitney Bowes.
Well, we're going to get into that, but what is the major expense item within that $9?
There are a lot of piece parts of it. Most of it, a good portion of it goes just to the carrier fees, right? So the shipping person that you're using to ship it, whether in the U.S. it's FedEx, USPS, or the USPS. A lot of it is just kind of people making choices that they don't really understand. I'll give you a great example. If you actually compared shipping rates and looked at a package that you wanted to send, if you didn't care if the package arrived at 10 in the morning or 3 p.m. in the afternoon, there might actually be as much as a 60% difference based on using different carriers based on just a 5 or 6 hour window of delivery. So some of it is just people not using all the tools and capabilities that are available to them, and some of it is just the cost of the networks that have built up over time.
It's fascinating. I'm old enough to remember when FedEx started, and happened to be in Memphis the first 3 weeks that it opened, and seeing someone saying, "Why would anybody want something urgently next day?" And I listened to that, but now we pay on the average for FedEx. What is it, $18 for a FedEx letter?
It varies a lot, and to your point, it used to be just that overnight was the biggest thing, right? I mean, now we work with clients who are doing same-day package drop-off. So we work with people like, helping them get connected with eDeliv and Uber Rush. We'll actually, in some cities, do same-day package delivery. So it's amazing how much consumer expectations have changed in the shipping industry, and that's something that it's really important for all of our SMB, brethren to think about. You think about what Amazon, for example, has done on expectations. The expectation that anything you order is instantly going to arrive the next day at essentially no cost to you is a pretty powerful expectation level that we're all running hard to catch up to. And it's really important that we understand how we both can work in environments and understand what those expectations are from consumers that we work with, and then importantly, understand what the tools are that are available to us to try to let us meet those expectations in ways that don't break the bank.
I just read this week that Amazon is now saying out of stock when they find that the cost of delivery is too prohibitive for an item. Given their origination distribution point and the final point. It was an article that just appeared this week in the Wall Street Journal. But what do you say to that?
Yeah, look, I think especially in the U.S., that's one of the biggest challenges that people often find, right? It's this notion of the last mile delivery or the first mile pickup. It is interesting. One of the things that we've seen over time is we have this thing in the U.S. called the United Postal Service, which has a commitment that they must deliver that last mile anywhere they go. One of the interesting caveats of that is you see folks like Amazon, UPS, and FedEx all making adjustments, changes in perception on what they offer from a services point of view. And one of the things that we found is a lot of times, the USPS is actually doing a much better job than people think in reducing cost and meeting the same types of service levels that the other carriers might. But that obligation to deliver the last mile is something that gives them a real advantage as they look at their shipping capability.
Well, if that's an advantage, why are they losing so much money?
Look, if I was an economist on the USPS, I'd be doing a lot different things now.
No, I know. But I'd like to explore that a little bit with you, because in our surveys and other surveys, the most disliked postal service is the U.S. Postal Service. Yet, as you're saying, they basically do a fairly decent job. Could you explore that a little bit?
Yeah, look, I think there's two important points that I'd get out on that. One is, first and foremost, I want to reemphasize, understanding the multi-carrier shipping environment, understanding what your options are across carriers is probably the most important thing that your listeners can do, right? I mean, if you think about it, you just think about your home life. I know when I go online and I want to send something, I go to my bookmarks and up comes the standard carrier I used, yesterday, and I just use that as a default and don't really spend a lot of time and effort thinking about it. So, this notion of looking at multi-carrier options and again, thinking about what your requirements are from a timing and a delivery point of view has a huge impact. And then secondarily, I will say that the service levels across the carriers, USPS included, are relatively comparable in a lot of ways that people might not understand or might not have been used to in the past.
We're talking with Jason Dyes. He's EVP with Pitney Bowes. And now I'm going to give you a big chance to talk about what you said this. How does your system enable a small business to find these, I will say, gems within the shipping sector?
Yeah, look, and I appreciate that opportunity. Again, this is something that we at Pitney have been focused on for a long time. We've been in the mailing and shipping business for almost 100 years with small and medium business clients. So we spend a lot of time and effort understanding what those pain points are. If I think back to the shipping index, we talked about 12 billion packages a year in the U.S. About half of that, about 6 billion, are generated by small and medium businesses. So it is a huge spend and a huge opportunity. I think the first thing I'd say is, it's important for people to understand that there are new technologies out there, including cross-border shipping capabilities, cloud-based carrier shipping products. There's lots of different technology platforms that allow them to get some measure of control over their shipping spend. This is something that we obviously think we do very well. We've announced a bunch of products over the last year or so, things like SendPro Online, which gives people the ability to do that multi-carrier comparisons that I talked about. We have a product that we announced last year in the market called SendPro C-Series, which is really important because it provides an all-in-one physical and digital shipping device, a shipping and mailing station for clients. It gives you everything from a scale, a labor printer, the technology to access these multi-carrier comparisons, the ability to track packages in ways that are important. And ultimately, there are a handful of tips that we would encourage everyone to think about as they go off and try to reduce their spend in this shipping space. The first one, Don, we've talked about is one we've mentioned a couple times, which is really you got to look at the multi-carrier options as you try to optimize your shipping. It is relatively easy to do with tools like SendPro or SendPro C-Series, and it's going to for sure save you money, especially when you present options or you get presented with options that really make you think for a second, what do I really need? Do I really need it there at 10 a.m. or is 3 p.m. okay? Do I really need a full level of tracking or is just delivery confirmation okay? The different types of services that are out there that, by the way, vary by carrier, they change on a regular basis depending on points of origins, points of destination, and you can really make hay with real-time analytics and analysis of what your options are. So that's a key one. I will say there's an obvious one, which is a lot of the carriers now are moving to charging based on volume, so size and weight. So just making sure that you're conscious about what you're sending is important. Smaller is better as an obvious statement. And I'd encourage folks to look at flat rate shipping options because it makes it much easier to reduce size and cost. We've talked about the high-tech shipping capabilities that are there online. Again, SendPro is the one I'd encourage everyone just to take a quick look at. It'll at least tell you what the types of capabilities that there are out there. And then I think it's important that you use those high-tech shipping capabilities, that software, to make sure that you keep your clients in the loop with shipping and tracking details. It is really important to make sure that the money you're spending on this gets you to a satisfied customer at the end of the day. And then there's all kinds of ancillary things that become important depending on your volume of shipping. Making sure that you have address verification, that you can verify that the address that you're putting in is a place that can receive packages and will ultimately get it, saves you money at the end of the day because those charges will come back to you if it's undeliverable. So there's lots of opportunities out there. Happy to talk about a few examples, but the good news is we don't have to always be the highest cost shipping country out there. There are opportunities to reduce it, and it can have a meaningful impact on your bottom line.
Well, let me simplify it a little bit and see if I understand. You're in effect saying your tools allows me, if I have a package that has to be in Des Moines on Thursday, but not necessarily at 10 a.m., but 3 p.m., that I can go online, look it up, look at the various carriers, and say it's a 12-inch by 22-inch package. It's 6 inches deep, and that if it arrives at 3 o'clock on Thursday, it's okay, and I can find the various rates from the various carriers. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah, that's right. So you can put into this tool whatever your pricing discounts are from the various shippers you might use. It'll pull up a range of shipping options for you. It allows you to select the services you want. So, for example, do you want to track it every time it's scanned at the USPS in every station and know that? Or do you just want to know when it's at the end? Do you want a guaranteed package or do you not? Do you want it overnight? There are lots of services, obviously, that go into this. And there's lots of timing and delivery options. And one of the cool things that we can do now, because we have a lot of data that we've built up over time with our million clients, we understand pretty carefully and pretty specifically that shipping from this point of origin, Topeka, Kansas, to this destination, Minneapolis, Minnesota, here are the range of options that you can get and the different price points that you have on it. It's a pretty powerful set of capabilities. And then on top of that, we have tools and capabilities that are linked in there that allow you to do analytics and understand really what your shipping spend is, whether you're a one-person office or whether you have locations in many places. It really gets you get a handle on how you're spending, how you're making those decisions, and how you might do it more efficiently to reduce cost.
Well, let me jump. Companies today are, in effect, outsourcing their shipping by either putting it with Amazon or some other outfits like that, so that if they get the order in, it goes onto their website, but then goes directly to the distribution center, which may be a totally different company. How do you fit into that scenario?
Yeah, so we have a couple different plays that we could do there. First off, we have a whole part of our business that works with larger retailers, larger places like that, to help them optimize their cost and reduce complexity as they go forward. That is both part of my business and part of my sister business here at Pitney Bowes, where we have a global e-commerce business that tends to specialize on helping larger retailers optimize their shipping and carrying costs. So, the interesting thing for us is we have a range of solutions that goes across a pretty darn wide spectrum. We have a history of data and analytics that we can use to help optimize, and it generally works out pretty well with clients who can start to realize savings pretty darn quickly as they go forward.
Well, we just have a couple of minutes left. What would you say to our audience? I know you've been saying it, but for the office, the service, the non-bulk shippers, what are the 2 or 3 things that you tell them when you see them in conferences, etc.?
Yeah, I think especially for the smaller businesses and the ones that tend to do single office shipping, the interesting thing is you have a chance to break habits. As I said earlier, typically you just bring up the browser, it's got your existing carrier rates that you're used to seeing, and you have it right there, just click the button and go. And while that for sure is easy, you start to do that multiple times a day or multiple times a week, it starts to add up pretty quick. And so, you can still get the same access to all the rate advantages that you get with whoever you have traditionally, shipped with, but you can start to look at what your other options are and make much more intelligent choices. And I will tell you, it becomes second nature and very easy very quickly. It is a very simple and easy to use interface. It's very intuitive. And again, whether you're doing it online in kind of that online version, or whether you're doing it with something like the SendPro C Series, which is an all-in-one that allows you to ship, to weigh and to print the label right there, it works very effectively, and you can start saving money with the first package.
This is a wild question because we recently had somebody else on. But with the new laws allowing states and municipalities to tax sales, are you providing any tools to help companies understand what those new laws are going to mean in terms of collecting taxes?
So you found out so far in this call, Don, I'm not a USPS economics advisor, and I'm not a tax expert, so I'm going to have to defer that one. I do think, I will say that as you look at the costs that we lay out for you, especially in the multi-carrier environment, it is a fully burdened soup to nuts cost, so you really do understand that shipping spend in a very complete way.
Well, that was, like I say, off to the side, but it's only because we had someone else, and in our most recent survey, it showed that this was one of the future concerns of small business. But if people want, go ahead, you first.
I was just going to say, I will tell you, that's just another example of the level of complexity that's in this shipping and commerce space. And so any tool that you can get that lets you reduce that complexity and start to understand your spend better, I think it just reinforces the point.
And if people wanted to learn more about your study and talk to you or your people, what do they do? Yeah,
we can be accessed through pb.com. PB standing for pitneybows.com, a pretty easy and basic website, and there's lots of information there on the study itself, and certainly on how you can start to learn a little bit more about the services and offerings that we have to help you out, reduce the complexity, and maybe save a little bit of money.
We've been talking with Jason Dyes. He's EVP and President of SMB Solutions at Pitney Bowes. A link to his website, which is pb.com, which is really easy, will be on our recalculating.biz tonight, where you can hear this and every other Recalculate program. And you can also tell us of guests you'd like to hear. Jason, thank you so much for being with us.
Don, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure, Don. Thanks for your time.
You too.
Dan Perkins here for Recalculating.biz with your small business tip of the day. People are concerned about the massive hack to computer systems that took place in over 150 nations just a few weeks ago. Were you protected? So here's the tip of the day. Close the windows and doors in your computer. If the windows and doors are locked, the bad guys can't get in. And the best way to lock the windows and doors in your computer is to turn it off when you're done for the day. If you leave the computer on 24/7, bad guys can attack you when you are asleep or away. You lock the doors and windows of your home when you leave home, don't you? So lock the doors and windows of your computer. If you have employees, make sure they turn off their computers when they leave for the day. Make sure you set your computers to automatic download for system updates. That way you will always have the most recent operating system. Just turn off the computers and you'll have a new title, the head of cybersecurity for your business. Go to recalculating.biz for more helpful tips. This has been Dan Perkins with your Recalculating Small Business Tip of the Day. Dan Perkins here from Recalculating.biz with your featured book. I want to tell you about a recent interview I had with Bob Bethel, a turnaround specialist with lots of success in small business. Bob's new book is Strengthen Your Business, Fail-Proof Strategies for Small Business. He tells us of his life successes and failures that have made him and his clients so successful. Over the years, Bob has brought 77 companies back from the brink and changed them into thriving, profitable businesses. His energy is amazing, and at 74, he proves that you can still have a great deal to give others if you just try. His suggestions are easy to understand and very helpful. One insight struck me was that most companies do not have a plan. The old Chinese proverb says, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there, is true today. Bob Bethel's book, Strengthen Your Business, can be found at Amazon.com or can be ordered at your local bookstore. This has been Dan Perkins with your Recalculating.biz featured book.
Tell me, Dan, tell me about your latest book.
My current book that's coming out, I should say, is Why Can't Grammy Remember Me? And it's really the first book written for children between the ages of 9 and 12 and their families dealing with dementia. Dementia is a growing problem with the elderly in the United States and around the world, and we are not very well informed about what's going on, what's happening. So I wrote this book in the form of a mystery. And I have two little girls, 9 and 12, who have a magical power to seem to be able to find things that are lost. And so they go to their dads and moms and they say, we work all over the neighborhood helping people find things, and we seem to find things. And their dad says, yes, you have a magical talent to do that. And they said, we'd like to start a business to see if we can help other people. So they decided to start a business. The two girls' names are Hudson and Charlotte, and they start H&C's Lost and Found. If you've lost it, we find it. And so they build a business, and they convince the dads to build them an office and a treehouse in the backyard. And they get busy making posters and flyers trying to get customers. And their dads take them downtown, and they put them in the windows and on the telephone poles and light poles. And they go home, and first week goes by, and nobody comes. And the second week and third week, and nobody comes. They're really, really dejected. And the fourth week comes, and there's a knock at the door, and they walk over and open the door, and there's a young man standing there with one of their flyers in his hands. And he says to them, my dad says the reason why my Grammy can't remember me is because she's lost her memory. And your flyer says you find things that are lost. Can you find my Grammy's memory? Well, they don't know anything about memory, so they take his name and they go see their dads to see what can happen. And the story evolves into how they learn about what dementia is and what's going on in the body when somebody has dementia. And then they decide, while they can't find their customer's memory, they can help him build the tools to retain her in his memory. And so at the end of the book, there are about 10 to 12, 13 things that families can do together to work on to preserve the memory of Grandma and Grandpa, so the generations can know who these people were. And that's the story.
What a great book. When will it be available, and how can people get it?
Well, it'll be available on Amazon.com. A lot of people who have read it, who've had moms and dads that have been stricken with Alzheimer's or dementia, tell me that they really now begin to understand what's happening in Grandma's brain. And we took a different approach. Rather than do the typical brain cross-section, I work with the artist, and we design highways in the brain. And there's a brain of one of the little girls and the brain of Grammy. They both have highways, roads, but the girl's brain, everything is green and go. Grammy's brain is full of no left turns, do not enter, stop, no right turns. So all of the messages that need to come from our brain get screwed up, and we can't function. Great illustrations, though. Wonderful illustrations.
Well, say goodbye, Dan.
All right.
Time for us to go.
Thank you for joining us. And by the way, if you didn't hear all of today's show, you can go to recalculating.biz, and you can pick up this show and past shows to expand your knowledge as becoming more successful entrepreneurs. Thank you for joining us. and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for joining us on Recalculating. We hope the information you received on today's episode was helpful to you in starting and growing your business. Please go to our website, recalculating.biz, to contact us, to listen to past shows, and see special offers. Until next time, remember, if you grow, we grow. Join us next week for more helpful ideas to make your business a great success. Recalculating, a program designed to help you be successful.